Are you ready to crush the math portion of your real estate exam? I've got the top 15 math questions that could make or break your score and your real estate career. Let's break these math questions down today in a way that'll have you walking into that exam with confidence. I'll read out each question, so feel free to pause the video to work through the question yourself. Once you're ready, hit play again because I'll walk you through the solution and reveal the correct answer. And make sure to stay till the end for a bonus practice question that'll have you thanking yourself for watching this video. Let's dive in. Number 1. A building was purchased for $550,000 with a 15% down payment. If the lender charged the buyer 3 discount points, how much will the buyer need to cover these two? For this question, I like to use my new method called the DLS chart. I'll bring it out now so that you guys can see what I'm talking about. As you can see, this chart shows that when we have a buyer, like we have in this scenario, we know that the down payment plus the loan amount is going to equal the sales price. We also have a column for percentages and we have a column for dollar amounts. Let's see this chart in action. We see that the building was purchased for $550,000. That is our sales price. So that'll go in the sales column. Sales price is always going to be 100%. Now remember, down percent plus loan percent has to always equal the 100%, just like the down dollar plus the loan dollar has to equal the sales dollar. So now we see that we have a 15% down payment. That's going to go in this box. Now we see that the lender charged the buyer 3 discount points. Well, discount points are always attached to the loan amount. So that is always going to go right here. And remember, 3 discount points is going to be 3%. So in the question, it asks, how much will the buyer need to cover these two? That means, what will the buyer need to bring to closing in the down payment? And how much will the buyer have to bring to pay for points at closing? So let's work this question out. So we see here that we need to find out how much down payment the buyer needs to bring to the table at closing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the sales price, multiply it times 15%, and that is going to give me my down payment amount. So $550,000 times 0.15 is going to give me a down payment of $82,500. So I'm going to put that here. Now we have to find the loan amount, the loan dollar. We can find this in 2 ways. We could find it by simply subtracting these two totals, or remember, this down percent plus this loan percent has to always equal 100%. So we could also subtract 100 minus 15%, and we see that our loan percent is 85%. We can also multiply 550 times 85% to get our loan amount. So let's do that. 550,000 times 0.85 is going to equal $467,500. So that's our loan amount, $467,500. And now you see all we have to do is multiply by 3%. So $467,500 times 0.03 is going to give us how much the buyer pays in discount points, which is going to be $14,025. So that goes here. So now all we have to do is add these two totals. So we get $82,500 plus $14,025. That is a total of $96,525. So the answer is C. Number 2. A buyer contracts without contingency to purchase a home for $500,000. The house is appraised at $480,000 and the lender agrees to make a 90% loan to value loan. How much cash must the buyer pay for the purchase price? Well, we're working with a buyer, so I'm going to bring out the DLS chart. Now we could fill in the DLS chart. But for this one, we see that there was a purchase price of $500,000, but the home only appraised at $480,000. That means that the lender will only allow $480,000 maximum. So we're going to use that as our sales price instead of the $500,000. Remember, that's always out of 100%. Since the buyer and the seller contracted for $500,000, that means the buyer is going to have to bring $20,000 on top of their down payment to the table to close. So let's see here. We see we have a 90% loan to value. So we could put that here, which means we have a 10% down payment. Multiply 480 times 10%, and that is going to give us a down payment of $48,000. So $48,000 plus $20,000 is going to give us a total the buyer needs to bring to closing of $68,000. So the answer is B. Number 3. What is the interest rate on an interest-only loan of $225,000 if quarterly interest payments are $4,218.75? For this example, they are asking what is the interest rate, and we have a principal amount, and we're seeing here we have interest payments on the amount, which quarterly is giving us a time. Remember, there are 4 quarters to 1 year. And here they're asking for the rate. So that means that we are going to use the formula I equals P times R times T. I have a new T chart for this kind of formula, which is easier to use. Here is the T chart for this type of formula. Now, let's plug in what we know. They're wanting to know the interest rate. So that's our question mark here. We see that this $225,000 is our principal. So that goes in this column. Quarterly interest payments of $4,218.75. Let's multiply that by 4. So 4 times $4,218.75 is going to equal $16,875. So that is the total interest that was paid for the year. So I will put that in this interest column. Now time is 1 year. Now we know that 225,000 times 1 is just going to leave it 225,000. So according to this T chart, all we have to do is $16,875 divided by $225,000. So $16,875 divided by $225,000 is going to equal 0.8 0.075. And remember, we have to multiply that by 100 to convert it into a percentage, which equals 7.5%. So the answer here is A. Number 4. A home was bought 4 years ago. The purchase price was $72,000 and the buyer made a down payment of $12,500. The current loan balance is $68,000. The house was recently appraised for $123,000. What is the equity? Now, on this one, you're going to be tempted to use the DLS chart because we're talking about a buyer here. But don't be tempted to do so because remember, what we're looking for is equity. Now, for those of us that don't remember what equity is, equity in real estate refers to the difference between the value of a property and the amount of money still owed on it. For example, if you owed a house worth $300,000 and you owed $200,000 on your mortgage, your equity in the house would be $100,000. It's like having a part of the property that's all yours, free from any debt. So let's look at this example. We see that the house was recently appraised for $123,000. That's the current value. Now, the current loan balance is $68,000. So really, all we have to do is subtract $123,000 minus $68,000. And that equals $55,000. So the answer here is B. So as you notice, none of the other values were required. They were just there to throw you off. Number 5, a house that was listed for $294,000 sold for $288,000. The new loan amount was $264,000. The state where the sale occurred charges a transfer fee, which is completed at the rate of $2.50 per $1,000. What is the transfer fee for this transaction? Now, there's 2 things in this question that I want you to understand. Whenever we're talking about transfer fee, we're talking about the sales price. So the sales price is the one that we are going to be working with. We don't need the $294,000 or what the loan amount is. Now, the second thing I want you to notice is this right here. The word per means to divide. So if we take $2.50 and divide it by $1,000, that is going to equal 0.0025. Now, all we have to do is multiply that amount by our sales price. So $288,000 times 0.0025 is going to equal $720. So the answer here is D. Okay, number 6. A company desires a parcel of land which must be 3 times the size of its proposed building. If the building design includes 35,000 square feet, then which of the following minimum sized lots should be purchased? In this question, we see that the parcel of land has to be 3 times the size of, meaning multiplying, its proposed building. Well, the proposed building is 35,000 square feet. So let's multiply 3 times 35,000 square feet. And that is going to give us a total of 105,000 square feet. Now we remember from our real estate school that 1 acre equals 43,560 square feet. So we have to take 105,000 square feet and divide it by 43,560 square feet to convert it into acres. That is going to equal a total of 2.4 acres. So in order for this building to fit in this lot, we need at least 3 acres of land. So the answer to this one is C. How are we doing so far? If you're getting these right, give yourself a pat on the back. Comment, "I got this," if you're feeling confident, or let me know which one tripped you up. Number 7. Roger's annual property taxes are $2,100. If the tax rate is $3.50 per $100 of the taxable value, what is the taxable value of the property? Just like we discussed in the previous question in number 5, remember that this has the word per in it, which means divide. So let's do that. So we're going to take $3.50 and divide it by $100. That is going to give us a total of 0.035. If you notice in this question, it says if the tax rate is, which means equals, tax rate is this 2,100. The word of means to multiply. So let's put it into perspective. So it's saying 2,100 equals 0.035. The word of means multiply, and then the taxable value. So they want us to find the taxable value. So what we could do is take out the T-chart, because the taxable value would be this total amount. We put the part of 2,100 in the top and the rate of 0.035 in the rate column. And we see that now we just have to divide. So $2,100 divided by 0.035 is going to equal $60,000. So the answer here is A. Number 8. A self-storage building is being designed as a 3-story structure with each floor covering 5,000 square feet. 25% of the total area is allocated for hallways, corridors, and administrative offices. The proposed storage units are 15 by 15 feet. How many storage units can be accommodated in the facility? For this question, I want to find out what's the total square footage of this building with all 3 stories. So if it's 3 stories, each floor is 5,000 square feet. I just say 3 times 5,000, and that's going to give me 15,000 total square feet. Now, if it says here 25% of this building is allocated for hallways, corridors, and offices, that means that 75%, remember these have to equal 100%. So 75% is going to be allocated for the storage bins. So let's find out how much space we could use for the storage bins. So I'm going to take the total square footage of 15,000 square feet and multiply it by 75%. That's going to give us 11,250 square feet to work with. So now let's find out how big these boxes are. They're 15 by 15. So 15 times 15 equals 225 square feet. So if I just take 11,250 square feet and divide it by 225 square feet, that means that I could fit a total of 50 boxes. So the answer here is B. Number 9. A sales associate earned $4,500 representing 50% of the broker's commission from a property sale of $150,000. What was the commission rate? When we do commission questions, we're definitely going to use the T-chart. So let's bring out the T-chart. Now that we have the T-chart out, we can definitely plug in what we have. So $4,500 is going to go in the part section. And that's 50% of the broker's commission. So we're going to put that 50% in the rate column. Let's convert that. 50 out of 100 is 0.5. So let's divide. So $4,500 divided by 0.5 is going to equal $9,000. That's the total amount that was paid to the broker. Now, all we have to do is plug that $9,000 back in the parts section and the $150,000 in the total amount and divide again. So $9,000 divided by $150,000 is going to give us a total of 0.06. Now just multiply by 100 and we get a total of 6%. So the answer here is D. Number 10. In the legal description, the northwest quarter of the southwest quarter of the northeast quarter of the southeast quarter of section 32 contains how many acres? Remember that there's 36 sections in a township, and each section contains 640 acres. So that's going to be our starting number. So all we're going to do when we see these types of questions is you're going to take 640 and you're going to start dividing by this denominator, the bottom number of these fractions. So 640 divided by 4 is 160. Then 160 divided by this 4 is going to give us 40. Then 40 divided by this 4 is going to give us 10. Then 10 divided by this 4 is going to give us 2.5. So we have a total of 2.5 acres. So the answer here is B. Number 11. A borrower purchased a home giving a total of 20% as a down payment. The loan was for $736,000. How much did he pay for the home? For this question, since we're working with a buyer, I like to use the DLS chart. So let's bring that out. In this question, you're going to realize how strong this DLS chart really is. So we see here we have a 20% down payment. Let's put that in here. Remember, sales price is always 100%. Now, the loan amount is $736,000. So that is going to go right here. Now, if you notice, you have a down payment percentage and a loan amount. You cannot mix those two totals together. So if you were to plug those into the T-chart, you will get it completely wrong. So that's why I say use the DLS chart for these types of questions. So what does that leave us? That leaves us with a loan amount of 80%. So now we can use those two totals of 80% and 736 and plug them into the T-chart. So let's bring out the T-chart. Now that we have the T-chart here, we can plug in the $736,000 in the part section and then the 80% in the rate column. So that's 80 out of 100 is going to give us 0.8. So now you see all we do is divide. So if we divide $736,000 by 0.8, we get a total of $920,000 as our sales price. So the answer here is C. Remember, you could only mix the 20% down payment percentage with the down payment dollar and the 80% loan to value ratio with the loan amount. All right, number 12. A seller sold his duplex with closing scheduled for June 20th. Each unit rents for $600 per month, and the rent from both apartments are collected on the first day of the month. If the buyer owns the day of closing, how would this reflect on the closing statement? Now, for these types of proration questions, since we're talking about a monthly rental amount, we are going to use the DAMS method, which stands for divide, add, multiply, and subtract. Those are the 4 steps that we're going to take to solve this question. Before we start that, we have to find the total amount of rent that is going to be divided up here. So since each unit is $600 and we're talking about a duplex, that means 2 units, we're going to take $600 and multiply it by 2. That is going to leave us a total rent of $1,200 that we have to divvy up between the seller and the new buyer. So now we can begin the DAMS method. So our first step is to divide. So we're going to divide the amount of rent, $1,200, and we're going to divide it, since it's a monthly amount, we're only going to use the number of days in the closing month, which is June. Whenever you're prorating a monthly amount, you're only going to use either 30 or 31 days. June has 30 days in it, so we're going to use 30 days here. So that is going to give us a total of $40 per day. The second step is to add. What are we adding here? We're only adding up the number of days the seller owns the property for the month of June. So the seller owns the property from June 1st until June 19, because the buyer owns the day of closing. So we do not count June 20th here. So that means we have a total of 19 days that the seller owns the property for the month of June. So now the third step is to multiply. So we're going to multiply step 1's answer, which is $40 a day, times step 2's answers, 19 days. And that is going to give us a total of $760. That is the amount that the seller gets to keep. Now we have to find out how much the seller has to give back to the buyer. So we're going to now subtract. So what are we going to subtract? The total amount of rent minus what the seller keeps of $760. And the amount is $440. So that is going to be a debit to the seller and a credit to the buyer for $440. So the answer to this one is D. Debit of $440 is due to the seller. If you want to practice a little more on proration and fully understand when and how to use the DAM or DAMS method, check out the video at the top for more information. I'll also leave it linked in the description box below. Number 13. Frank purchases a $310,000 home. The lender requires 15% down payment. The lender is charging 2.5 discount points. Calculate the discount points due at closing. Since we're working with a buyer in this question, let's use the DLS chart. Now that we have the DLS chart out, let's fill it in. So we have a $310,000 purchase price. That is going to go in our sales amount. Remember, this is always 100%. We have a 15% down payment, so that's going to go here, which means we have an 85% loan to value. Remember, 15 plus 85 has to equal 100%. Now we see that the lender is charging 2.5 discount points. So remember, discount points are always attached to the loan amount. So we're going to be multiplying it by the loan amount. So that's going to be times 2.5% here. And what they really want to know is how much is the buyer paying in discount points. So we have to find the loan amount. So all we have to do is multiply 310,000 times 85% to get the loan amount. So $310,000 times 0.85 is going to equal $263,500. That's our loan amount. So we're going to put that here, $263,500. And now all we have to do is multiply it by 2.5%. So $263,500 times 0.025 is going to equal a total of $6,587.50. So that's how much they paid in discount points. So the answer to this one is D. Number 14. A home is being purchased for $275,000. The buyer agrees to an 80% loan with the seller paying $5,000 of the buyer's closing costs. What amount will the buyer need to meet his down payment? Once again, we're dealing with a buyer, so we're going to use the DLS chart. So let's bring that out. Now that we have the DLS chart out, let's start filling it in. So we see that the purchase price is $275,000. So let's put that here in the sales price. Remember, that's always 100%. Now we see we have an 80% loan to value ratio. So let's put that here. The seller is paying $5,000 of the buyer's closing costs. Well, that's fine because all we really need is how much is he going to need for his down payment, which is this box. So in order to do that, we know that all we have to do is find the down payment percentage, which is 20%, and then multiply our sales price times 20% to get our down payment amount. So $275,000 times 0.2 is going to equal $55,000. So we only need $55,000 for a down payment. So the answer here is C. So as you could see, this $5,000 was not needed because closing costs is a separate charge to a down payment amount. Number 15, our bonus question here says, an apartment building contains 12 units, each renting for $2,000 per month. For 5 months, the building maintained full occupancy. For 4 months, 4 units were vacant, and for 3 months, 2 units were vacant. What is the annual vacancy rate? Now, in order to solve this question, we need to create a little chart. It might seem a little daunting at first, but it is a great way for you to visualize what needs to be done. So we're going to have months here. We're going to have available units and vacant units here. So months, remember there's 12 months total. And then we have available units. So remember there's 12 total units. So each month there's going to be 12 units. Which leaves us a total of 144 total units throughout the year. Now let's see here how many units are vacant. Well, according to this scenario, we see that 5 months we had full occupancy, which means 0 units were vacant. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 were at 0. They were full occupancy, 0 vacancy. Now for the next 4 months, we had 4 units vacant. So we're going to put 1, 2, 3, 4 fours here. And then for 3 months, we have 2 units vacant. So we have 1, 2, 3. Now, this is going to give us a total of 22 total units vacant throughout the year. So now in order to find the vacancy rate, we take the 22 units throughout the year that were vacant divided by the total number of units, and that is going to give us 0.153. So if we multiply that by 100, that's going to give us 15.3%. So the answer here is A. There are 15 questions to boost your real estate math game. Remember, math doesn't have to be scary. The more you practice, the easier it gets. If you found this helpful, smash that like button and subscribe for more tips, tricks, and exam practice. And don't forget to grab my Power Trio ebook bundle. It's the ultimate guide to acing your real estate exam. The link is in the description box below for you. Remember, every great agent started right where you are today. So keep going, you got this. And don't forget, practice makes perfect. So if you want to perfect your math skills, make sure to check out the video on the screen all about discount points and how to solve them. Until then, I'll see you in the next video.